So I'm trying to figure out a way to read this book and to use this microphone. Is there a way to read this book and use this microphone? Is that a possibility? Maybe I could just prop the book up with this other book here. Yeah, there we go. Okay. So, all in the day of a life of John Masters. Let's go ahead and let's just jump right into it. It takes a loud voice to make the deaf hear. Too long have they answered our voices by imprisonment. The rope, rifle volleys, make no mistake, the explosion of my bomb is not only the cry of the rebel valiant, but the cry of an entire class which vindicates its rights and which will soon add acts to words, for be sure of it, in vain will they pass the laws. The ideas of the thinkers will not halt. Just as in the last century all the governmental forces could not prevent the Diderots and the Voltaires from spreading emancipating ideas among the people, so all the existing governmental forces will not prevent the Reclus, the Darwins, the Spencers, the Ibsens, and the Mirbeaus from spreading the ideas of justice and liberty, which will annihilate the prejudices that hold the mass in ignorance. And these ideas, welcomed by the unfortunate, will flower in acts of revolt, as they have done in me, until the day when the disappearance of authority shall permit all men to organize freely according to their choice, when everyone shall be able to enjoy the product of his labor, and when those mortal maladies called prejudices shall vanish, permitting human beings to live in harmony, having no other desire than to study the sciences and love their fellows. I conclude, gentlemen, by saying that a society in which one sees such social inequalities, as we see all about us, in which we see everyday suicides caused by government, prostitution, flaring at every street corner, a society whose principal monuments are barracks and prisons. Such a society must be transformed as soon as possible, on pain of being eliminated, and that speedily, from the human race. Hail to him who labors by no matter what means for this transformation. It is this idea that has guided me in my duel with authority. So who is this? He's talking about the guy named Valiant, but this is not Valiant. This is somebody else. This is all the essential Emma Goldman. My God, it's not that Goodman on Roseanne, is it? No, it's Goldman, Emma Goldman. So when it comes to what is the philosophy of Luigi Mangione, I'm getting some inspiration from Emma Goldman. Why would Luigi Mangione do what he does? Remember, the same time that Luigi Mangione did what he did, Daniel Penny just murdered a homeless guy for just kind of talking crazy. But if you talk crazy, but you have a business suit and you cause the misery of hundreds, dozens, maybe thousands, I think what it shows is that we as a society, the people that give a damn, are pissed off that America could be so much fucking better, but instead we're being ruled by a bunch of psychopaths. We're being ruled by a bunch of criminals who can't see that Edward Snowden is a hero. Of course we could have free education, free health care. Of course we could have UBI checks. Of course we could have a modern society like China, where you have futuristic buildings and trains and automobiles. Even their cars are better than ours. They don't have any homelessness. 95% of the Chinese people own their own homes, and a lot of them own a second home. And they can never be homeless. If they lose their jobs, there's a law that says that they don't have to pay any rent. The rent is a proportion of their income. So if you compare and contrast, one person killed a guy, an undesirable, a poor person, a nobody, right? But then that other guy set that one woman on fire. That was okay. That was okay. Nobody, when it comes to poor people, cops just walked by that woman that was engulfed in flames. So you kill some poor person. I just saw, there's shootings that happen every goddamn day. So when it's a middle class, working class, poor, or homeless, nobody gives a damn. People just blink their eyes and say, shit happens. Well, shit keeps on happening over and over again. It isn't just shit happening. It's a mismanagement of society. We can make 1,000 times what the caveman can make. So one person can make shoes for 300 people. And yet there's people that's still starving. There's still people that don't have food, water, shelter. And in the richest country in the world, that's absolutely a crime. That's an abomination. That's fucking despicable. That's fucking disgusting. So if you just compare and contrast what Luigi Mangione did versus what Daniel Penny did, well, Daniel Penny killed a poor person. But Luigi Mangione, well, he killed a rich person. And these rich motherfuckers, they think that they're on the other side of the law. They think that they're on the side of the law that they can't be touched. Wait a second. You're not supposed to kill the rich people, the rich and powerful. You're only supposed to kill the poor and the powerless. What's going on? Nothing makes sense anymore. That damn United Healthcare was worth $500 billion. $500 billion. That means out of the top 100 economies, it beat like so many other goddamn countries. Greece, Finland, I don't know, other countries. So it was like one of the top 20 economies. When a corporation is bigger than a damn country's GDP, maybe that corporation is too big. And what's a damn healthcare company? How are you making your money there, healthcare company? By denying claims, by fleecing people, by taking people's general ideas of having a social safety net. Well, I want to be covered just in case, so here's $1 million. What if you just save that $1 million, and when you get the emergency that you need, or you could actually get checkups with $1 million? So the whole health insurance goddamn industry is a fucking scam. So I just want to reflect upon what is the philosophy of Luigi Mangione. And what better person to ask than Emma Goldman? Emma Goldman asked, is it their fault if they see clearly and suffer at seeing others suffer? Then they throw themselves into the struggle and make themselves the bearers of the popular claims. I am reproached with the wounds of those who are hit by my projectiles. Permit me to point out in passing that if the bourgeoisie had not massacred or caused massacres during the revolution, it is probable that they would still be under the yoke of the nobility. On the other hand, figure up the dead and wounded of Tonquin, Madagascar, Dahomey, and thereto the thousands, just millions of unfortunates who die in the factories and the mines and wherever the grinding power of capital is felt. Add also those who die of hunger, and all this with the assent of our deputies. Gentlemen, in a few minutes you are to deal your blow, but in receiving your verdict I shall have at least the satisfaction of having wounded the existing society, that cursed society in which one may see a single man spending uselessly enough to feed thousands of families, an infamous society which permits a few individuals to monopolize all the social wealth, while there are hundreds of thousands of unfortunates who have not even the bread that is not refused to dogs, and while entire families are committing suicide for want of the necessities of life. So let's take a look at that. Who am I quoting here? I guess that's all Valiant. Why are they saying he quoted Valiant? I don't know. She mentions a bunch of people in here. I'll get to the very beginning. But she mentions Leon Zolgaz, Luigi Lucchini, Santa Caserio, who had killed Carnot, who had executed Valiant, Ron Rule, Rull, Memento, Trestles, Governor Atgeld, Judge Gary. She mentions the Homestead riots. She also mentions another Another historical event, Homestead riots, and then something else. Oh, yeah, right here. Henry Clay Frick, the Homestead strike of 1892 with the Carnegie Steel Company and Henry Clay, the chairman of the company. The fortification of the Homestead Steelworks. Henry Clay Frick, who was a good Christian man, is going to just outright kill 11 of the strikers, murder them in cold blood, and then kick out the widows and the orphans by kicking them out of the houses and making them live on the streets. You had that Bresci, who came from Patterson, New Jersey, who went to go kill the King Umberto, July 29th, 1900. You had Michel Angio Leo Lombardi, who had killed the Prime Minister Antonio Canovas del Castillo. They say he was garroted. There's actually a street named after Angiolillo in Foggia, Italy. They said he was laconic, which means of little words, very few, a man of few words. But he was pissed off at the repression and the mass torture at Montjuich. There was a guy named Francisco Gana who was talking about his crippled limbs and his scars. So the thing that's worse than the revolution is the thing that happened before the revolution. So let's go back to the beginning of this chapter. Again, this is The Essential Emma Goldman, and I'm reading from pages 24 to 30 to 36, 37, 38, 39, 39. All right, here's a couple of apt quotes. The ignorant mass looks upon the man who makes a violent protest against our social and economic iniquities as upon a wild beast, a cruel, heartless monster whose joy it is to destroy life and bathe in blood, or at best, as upon an irresponsible lunatic. Is that who Luigi Mangione is? A lunatic? A psychopath who just wants to bathe in blood? A wild beast, a cruel and heartless monster? Yet nothing is further from the truth. As a matter of fact, those who have studied the character and personality of these men, or who have come in close contact with them, are agreed that it is their supersensitiveness to the wrong and injustice surrounding them which compels them to pay the toll of our social crimes. Beyond every violent act, there is a vital cause. Bjornst Journey, Bjornson, in the second part of Beyond Human Power, emphasizes the fact that it is among the anarchists that we must look for the modern martyrs who pay for their faith with their own blood and who welcome death with a smile because they truly believe, as truly as Christ did, that their martyrdom will redeem humanity. So when he was going into the courtroom, he said that it goes against our lived experiences. We Americans deserve better, and it goes against our lived experiences. We know that we're being fleeced. We got to get 2 jobs, 3 jobs. We just keep quiet and churning, just keep our heads down and keep on marching, even though a lot of people's worlds just fall apart. Again, Zola in Germinal in Paris described the tenderness and kindness, the deep sympathy with human suffering of these men who closed a chapter of their lives with a violent outbreak against our system. The positive method, confirmed by the rational method, enables us to establish an ideal type of anarchist whose mentality is the aggregate of common psychic characteristics. Every anarchist partakes sufficiently of this ideal type to make it possible to differentiate him from other men. The typical anarchist, then, may be defined as follows: a man perceptible by the spirit of revolt under one or more of its forms: opposition, investigation, criticism, innovation; endowed with a strong love of liberty, egoistic or individualistic, and possessed of great curiosity, a keen desire to know. These traits are supplemented by an ardent love of others. a highly developed moral sensitiveness, a profound sentiment of justice, and imbued with missionary zeal. Such acts are the violent recoil from violence, whether aggressive or repressive. They are the last desperate struggle of outraged and exasperated human nature for breathing space in life. In our present society, for instance, an exploited wage worker who catches a glimpse of what work and life might and ought to be finds their own toilsome routine and the squalor of his existence almost intolerable. And even when he has the resolution and courage to continue steadily working his best and waiting until new ideas have so permeated society as to pave the way for better times, the mere fact that he has such ideas and tries to spread them brings him into difficulties with his employers. How many thousands of socialists and above all anarchists have lost work and even the chance of work solely on the ground of their opinions? It is only the especially gifted craftsman who, if he be a zealous propagandist, can hope to retain permanent employment. And what happens to a man with his brain working actively, with the ferment of new ideas, with the vision before his eyes of a new hope dawning for toiling and agonizing men, with the knowledge that his suffering and that of his fellows in misery is not caused by the cruelty of fate, but by the injustice of other human beings? What happens to such a man when he sees those dear to him starving, when he himself is starved? Such natures are in such a plight, and those by no means the least social or the least sensitive will become violent and will even feel that their violence is social and not antisocial. That in striking when and how they can, they are striking not for themselves, but for human nature. Outraged and despoiled in their persons and in those of their fellow sufferers. And are we, who ourselves are not in this horrible predicament, to stand by and coldly condemn these piteous victims of the furies and fates? Are we to decry as miscreants these human beings who act with heroic self-devotion, sacrificing their lives in protest, where less social and less energetic natures would lie down and grovel in abject submission to injustice and wrong? The guilt of these homicides lies upon every man and woman who intentionally or by cold indifference helps to keep up social conditions that drive human beings to despair. The man who flings his whole life into the attempt at the cost of his own life to protest against the wrongs of his fellow men is a saint compared to the active and passive upholders of cruelty and injustice, even if his protests destroy other lives besides his own. Let him who is without sin in society cast the first stone at such a one. The Haymarket riot. She also mentions the Haymarket riot. They said, not because you have caused the Haymarket bomb, but because you are anarchist, you are on trial. There was one story of one of these characters where somebody did something and then they cracked down on like 300 people and then they tortured them. They killed 5 of them, tortured a bunch of others. And then that guy is going to come back and then end up like getting Carnot, the Prime Minister of France, the Third Republic. So, well, hell, maybe you sitting there torturing the shit out of 300 people that had ideals. Okay, one of them might have committed a crime, but just because 300 of them had ideals, you're going to torture the shit out of them and execute a couple of them? And only a few of the survivors were able to escape because eventually the left-wing bourgeoisie press took a little bit of a sympathetic tone. Here they're talking about how you have a lot of immigrants come to America, and we told people about how we have a free republic and how they're going to have freedoms everywhere. Leon Zolgaz, he was called an anarchist, he was called a foreigner, but he actually grew up in America. He was born right here. He was born a free American on American soil. My country, 'tis of thee, sweet land of liberty. And then you just have the police round up a bunch of, there was a parade of unemployed people, and they had to crack it down, and they violently repressed the crackdown. Well, shit, that's enough right there to radicalize anybody. When people say, hey, what radicalized you? You just tell them rationality, common sense, me being against violence for violence sake, me being against the fascism of our times. She points out how this Averbunch was never proved that he was an anarchist, and how it kind of doesn't matter. Maybe you have the anarchist ideals, and there's a lot of similarities between socialist and anarchist. The end of communism is to get rid of the state, so once the dictatorship of the proletariat takes the state, then you get rid of the state. So Stalin didn't really do it right because he held on to the state forever. Fidel Castro held on to the state forever. At the very least, have it rotating power, right? Have elections. Gentlemen, in a few minutes, we already pointed that out. A single man spending uselessly enough to feed thousands of families, an infamous society which permits a few individuals to monopolize all the social wealth, while there are hundreds of thousands of unfortunates who have not even the bread that is not refused to dogs, and while entire families are committing suicide for want of the necessities of life. We're Americans. We're Americans. How can we put up with this shit? Then there's a guy named Santa Casirio. So Santa Casirio, you had the teacher of the little village school Ada Negri. The Italian poet spoke of Santa Casirio. I think this guy's only 20 years old. He said that he was a sweet, tender plant. A sweet, tender plant of too fine and sensitive texture to stand the cruel strain of the world. Gentlemen of the jury, I do not propose to make a defense, but only an explanation of my deed. But to all the workers who sweat the whole day long for a crust of bread while their labor produces wealth and abundance, one man can produce enough needs for 1,000, and yet we're making everybody beg, everybody sweat underneath some shitty-ass capitalist boss who they've mismanaged society. They care about their little fiefdoms. They don't care about the society, the community, the state as a whole. They don't care about the lot of us. I saw thousands of people who do not work, who produce nothing and live on the labor of others, who spend every day thousands of francs for their amusement. If a social theory is a strong factor inducing acts of political violence, how are we to account for the recent violent outbreaks in India, where anarchism has hardly been born? More than any other old philosophy, Hindu teachings have exalted passive resistance, the drifting of life, the nirvana, as the highest spiritual ideal. Yet the social unrest in India is daily growing and has only recently resulted in an act of political violence, the killing of Sir Curzon Willie by the Hindu maiden-law Dhingra. Resistance, tyranny, and indiscriminate punishment of innocent men have been the watchwords of the government of the alien dominion in India ever since we began the commercial boycott of English goods. The tiger qualities of the British are much in evidence now in India. They think that by the strength of the sword they will keep down India. It is this arrogance that has brought about the bomb. And the more they tyrannize over a helpless and unarmed people, the more terrorism will grow. We may deprecate terrorism as outlandish and foreign to our culture, but it is inevitable as long as this tyranny continues, for it is not the terrorists that are to be blamed, but the tyrants who are responsible for it. It is the only resource for a helpless and unarmed people. When brought to the verge of despair, it is never criminal on their part. The crime lies with the tyrant. Climate, food, occupation, nay, color, light, and sound must be considered in the study of human psychology. Anarchism, more than any other social theory, values human life above all things. All anarchists agree with Tolstoy in this fundamental truth: if the production of any commodity necessitates the sacrifice of human life, then society should do without that commodity. But it cannot do without that life. What did Che Guevara said? He says that the life of one person is more valuable than all the riches of the richest person out here. So when I think about the genocide of Gaza, what if for every innocent Palestinian that is killed, we bankrupt a billionaire? And we keep on bankrupting billionaires and throwing them out into the streets with no money, no food, no clothing, no housing, until you stop with the fucking murder. You want to sit there and try to tell me you're a staunch libertarian so you don't want health care for everybody? Fuck you. You don't give a fuck about other people. That's what you're saying. You're going to carry on with the fucking genocide of 300,000 kids, the slaughter, the massacre of the innocents. What the fuck is the matter with you motherfuckers? Y'all lost your goddamn soul. You've lost your fucking souls. Call yourselves Christians while massacring a bunch of Jesus Christ in Bethlehem. What the hell's the matter with you motherfuckers? That, however, no wise indicates that anarchism teaches submission. How can it, when it knows that all suffering, all misery, all ills result from the evil of submission? Has not some American ancestor said many years ago that resistance to tyranny is obedience to God? And he was not an anarchist even. I would say that resistance to tyranny is man's highest ideal. So long as tyranny exists in whatever form, man's deepest aspiration must resist it as inevitably as man must breathe. Compared with the wholesale violence of capital and government, political acts of violence are but a drop in the ocean. That so few resist is the strongest proof how terrible must be the conflict between their souls and unbearable social iniquities. High-strung like a violin string, they weep and moan for life so relentless, so cruel, so terribly inhuman. In a desperate moment, the string breaks. Untuned ears hear nothing but discord, but those who feel the agonized cry understand its harmony. They hear in it the fulfillment of the most compelling moment of human nature. And such is the psychology of anarchism. So I think a lot of it has to do with, just knowing that this country could be so much better. We need a communist to be president every 20 years or so. You just keep on getting these Ronald Reagan, ultra fucking imperialist, capitalist, selfish. Maybe you'll get a libertarian who at least gives a shit about our political freedoms. But capitalism is grinding on, and ultimately fascism is corporatism when the government and the corporations become one. So do we get our freedoms anymore? Are we still lying about these damn freedoms? We should have got Bernie Sanders instead of Biden. And instead of doing that, we got fucking Trump 2.0. So we get pure fascism. when we know we could do so much better than this? Bullshit.